I never thought my own sister would steal $12,700 from me for a luxury vacation to Europe. But there I was, staring at my credit card statement while my entire family sat around my dining table, completely oblivious to what I had just discovered. The worst part? They were all living in my house, rent-free, while planning their next family gathering. As I watched them laugh and joke about their amazing trip, I realized everything I thought I knew about family loyalty was about to change forever. Where are you watching from tonight? If this family betrayal story hits close to home, smash that like button and subscribe for more shocking family revenge tales. Trust me, you will not believe how this ends, and you definitely want to see the justice that is coming for these freeloaders. The discovery happened on a Tuesday morning that started like any other. I was reviewing my monthly credit card statements before my quarterly business meeting when I noticed charges that made absolutely no sense. Luxury hotel reservations in Paris, first-class airline tickets to Rome, expensive restaurant bills in Barcelona, designer shopping sprees in Milan. The total amount made my stomach drop. $12,700 charged over the span of 3 weeks. My first thought was fraud. Someone had stolen my credit card information and gone on an elaborate European spending spree. I immediately called the credit card company, ready to dispute every single charge and get my money back. The customer service representative was helpful, walking me through each transaction, asking if I recognized any of the merchants or locations. "Ma'am, I see here that the cardholder name on these transactions is actually showing as an authorized user on your account," she explained. "The name shows as Madison Rivera." Madison Rivera, my younger sister. The realization hit me like a physical blow. Madison was an authorized user on my account because I had added her years ago when she was going through a rough divorce and needed help rebuilding her credit. I had completely forgotten about it, honestly. She had never abused the privilege before, always asking permission before using the card for emergencies and always paying me back promptly. But $12,700 for a European vacation was definitely not an emergency. I hung up the phone and immediately called Madison. She did not answer. I called again, straight to voicemail. I sent text messages asking her to call me back urgently. Nothing. Radio silence. That evening, Madison finally showed up at my house with our parents and our older brother Marcus. They were all laughing and talking excitedly about something, carrying what looked like photo albums and souvenirs. My house had become the unofficial family gathering place ever since I bought it 3 years ago. It was the largest home among all of us, and I had always enjoyed hosting family dinners and celebrations. "Eva," Madison practically bounced through my front door. "You will never believe the amazing trip we just took. Look at these pictures." She started spreading out photographs across my coffee table. Pictures of her, Marcus, and our parents standing in front of the Eiffel Tower, eating gelato in Rome, touring museums in Barcelona. They all looked tanned, relaxed, and incredibly happy. "Wait," I said slowly, my heart starting to race. "You all went to Europe together." "It was supposed to be a surprise," our mother, Patricia, exclaimed. "Madison organized the whole thing as a family bonding experience. She said she wanted to treat everyone to the trip of a lifetime." "She paid for everyone's trip?" I asked, though I already knew the horrible answer. "Well," Marcus jumped in, "she handled all the logistics and bookings. We all contributed what we could, but Madison covered most of it. She said she had been saving up and got some kind of bonus at work." Madison worked as a receptionist at a dental office. There was no way she was getting bonuses large enough to fund a $12,000 European vacation for 5 people. "Madison," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "can I speak with you privately in the kitchen?" She followed me, still grinning, completely oblivious to what was coming. "Where did you get the money for this trip?" I asked directly. Her smile faltered slightly. "I told you I had been saving up and work gave me a bonus." "Madison, I know you used my credit card, $12,700, without asking me, without telling me." The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, then closed it, then opened it again, like a fish gasping for air. "Ava, I can explain," she finally whispered. "I was going to tell you. I was going to pay you back. When how you make $30,000 a year, Madison, this trip cost almost half your annual salary. I thought you would not mind. You always said family comes first, and you make so much money with your business. I figured you would understand that Mom and Dad are getting older, and we might not have many more opportunities for family trips like this." I stared at her in absolute disbelief. She had stolen from me, lied to our entire family about how she paid for the trip, and now she was trying to guilt me into being okay with it by bringing up our parents' ages. "You stole from me, Madison. You committed fraud using my credit card." "Do not be so dramatic, Eva. It is not stealing when we are family." That phrase would echo in my mind for weeks afterward. It was not stealing when we were family. As if blood relation gave her the right to take whatever she wanted from me without consequences. The confrontation in my kitchen marked the beginning of what would become the most complicated family crisis of my life. Madison's casual dismissal of her theft as a family privilege revealed something much darker about the dynamics I had unknowingly enabled for years. After our private conversation, Madison rejoined the family in my living room, acting as if nothing had happened. She continued showing off photos and souvenirs describing their luxurious hotels and expensive meals in detail. Every word felt like another slap in the face. Our parents were gushing about the trip, talking about how generous and thoughtful Madison was to organize such an elaborate surprise. Marcus was already asking when they could plan another family vacation together. None of them had any idea that they had essentially participated in spending my money without my knowledge or consent. I excused myself and went upstairs to my home office, where I spent the next several hours developing a strategy. As a business owner, I understood the importance of documentation, evidence, and strategic planning. If I was going to address this situation properly, I needed to approach it methodically. First, I printed out every single credit card statement showing the fraudulent charges. Hotel reservations, flights, restaurant bills, shopping expenses, tour bookings, transportation costs. I organized everything chronologically and by category, creating a comprehensive picture of exactly how my money had been spent without my permission. Next, I researched the legal implications. Technically, Madison had committed credit card fraud, even though she was an authorized user. The fact that she had made charges without my knowledge or consent and then lied about the source of funding to our family constituted fraudulent activity. I could potentially file criminal charges against her if I chose to pursue that route. But this was not just about the money, though. $12,700 was not an insignificant amount. This was about respect boundaries and the fundamental dysfunction in our family relationships that had allowed this situation to develop. I realized that I had unknowingly created an environment where my family felt entitled to my resources. I owned the largest house and had always hosted family gatherings. I had the most successful business and had frequently helped family members during financial emergencies. I had been generous with my time, money, and space, always prioritizing family connections above everything else. But somewhere along the way, my generosity had been interpreted as unlimited availability. My success had been viewed as a family resource rather than the result of my individual hard work and sacrifice. Madison's theft was not an isolated incident. It was the culmination of years of boundary erosion that I had failed to recognize or address. The next morning, I called a family meeting. I told everyone to come to my house that evening for dinner, saying I had something important to discuss. I spent the day preparing not just the meal, but my presentation of the evidence and my response plan. When everyone arrived, I served dinner as usual, maintaining normal conversation and family dynamics. After we finished eating, I asked everyone to stay seated at the dining room table. I need to share some information about Madison's recent European vacation. I began placing the stack of printed credit card statements on the table, specifically about how it was actually funded. Madison immediately tensed up, realizing what was coming. Madison did not save up for this trip. I continued spreading out the statements so everyone could see them. She did not receive a work bonus large enough to cover these expenses. This entire vacation was paid for using my credit card without my knowledge or permission. The silence that followed was deafening. Our parents stared at the papers, then at Madison, then back at the papers. Marcus leaned forward to get a better look at the charges. $12,700, I said, giving them time to process the amount. Charged to my personal credit card over 3 weeks while I was focused on a major business project and not monitoring my daily transactions. Madison, is this true? Our father Robert asked quietly. Madison burst into tears. I was going to pay her back. I wanted to give everyone a special family experience. Eva makes so much money. I did not think it would matter to her. You did not think it would matter that you stole from me? I asked. It is not stealing, she sobbed. We are family. Families share resources. Families ask permission before spending $12,000 of someone else's money, Marcus said slowly, his voice heavy with shock. Our mother, Patricia, was staring at Madison with an expression I had never seen before. Disappointment, embarrassment, and something that looked almost like disgust. Madison, how could you do this? She whispered. How could you lie to all of us? We thought you had worked so hard to save up for this trip. We were so proud of you. And how could you put us in this position? Our father added. We accepted expensive meals and luxury accommodations that we never would have agreed to if we had known Eva was unknowingly paying for everything. The family meeting continued for over 2 hours. Madison alternated between sobbing apologies and defensive justifications. She insisted that she had planned to pay me back, though she could never explain how someone making $30,000 annually was going to repay $12,700 anytime soon. Our parents were mortified, offering to somehow help repay the money, even though they lived on a fixed retirement income. Marcus was angry and embarrassed, saying he felt manipulated and deceived. By the end of the evening, I had made several things very clear. First, Madison had exactly 30 days to provide me with a detailed repayment plan, including timeline and method. Second, I was immediately removing her as an authorized user from all of my financial accounts. Third, there would be serious consequences if this situation was not resolved quickly and completely. But I did not tell them what those consequences would be. I was not ready to reveal the full extent of my response plan yet. The 30 days following our family confrontation were unlike anything I had ever experienced. What started as a straightforward case of credit card fraud evolved into a complex web of family politics, hidden resentments, and strategic maneuvering that would forever change our relationships. Madison's initial response was to avoid me completely. She stopped coming to family gatherings at my house, declined invitations to dinner, and barely responded to text messages or phone calls. When she did communicate, it was through our mother, who had apparently been designated as the family mediator in this crisis. Madison is working on a repayment plan, Patricia would tell me during our weekly phone calls. She just needs a little more time to figure out the logistics. But as the days passed, it became clear that Madison had no intention of taking responsibility for her actions. Instead, she had begun a campaign to reframe the entire situation as evidence of my selfishness and lack of family loyalty. Through our mother, I learned that Madison was telling people I was being unreasonable and cruel. She claimed that I was prioritizing money over family relationships, that I was holding a grudge over what she called a simple misunderstanding, and that my demand for repayment was evidence that I had never truly cared about our family bonds. The most infuriating part was that some of our extended family members were actually buying into her narrative. Madison had always been the baby of the family, the one who everyone protected, and made excuses for when she made poor decisions. She was skilled at presenting herself as a victim and manipulating situations to avoid accountability. But Madison had made a critical error in her strategy. She had underestimated my relationships with other family members and my ability to document and present facts rather than emotions. I started with Marcus, my older brother, who had been just as shocked and disappointed as our parents during the initial revelation. Marcus was a pragmatic person who worked in finance and understood the serious implications of unauthorized credit card use. More importantly, he had his own history of frustration with Madison's irresponsible behavior. "I have been thinking about this situation nonstop," Marcus told me during a private conversation at his house. "And honestly, Eva, this is not the first time Madison has pulled something like this." He went on to describe several incidents over the years where Madison had borrowed money from family members with promises to pay it back then, conveniently forgotten about the debt when repayment time came. Small amounts usually, but a clear pattern of financial irresponsibility and manipulation. The difference is that this time the amount is large enough that it cannot be ignored or written off as a family favor, he said, and the fact that she did it without asking makes it fraud not a loan. Marcus agreed to support whatever actions I decided to take, understanding that enabling Madison's behavior would only lead to more serious problems in the future. Next, I reached out to our Aunt Linda, our father's sister, who had always been the most sensible and straightforward member of our extended family. Linda was a retired teacher who had raised 3 successful children and had zero tolerance for manipulation or excuses. When I explained the situation to Linda, including Madison's recent attempts to portray me as the villain in this story, her reaction was immediate and unambiguous. "That girl has been spoiled rotten her entire life," Linda said bluntly. "Everyone in this family has been making excuses for her behavior since she was a teenager. Now she is 30 years old and still acting like rules do not apply to her." Linda offered to help in whatever way possible, including speaking to other family members who might have been influenced by Madison's victim narrative. But my most important alliance came from an unexpected source. My neighbor David, who worked as a private investigator and had become a close friend over the past 2 years since moving in next door. David had been aware of my large family gatherings and had occasionally joined us for barbecues and holiday celebrations. He knew the family dynamics well enough to understand the complexity of the situation I was facing. "Eva, I have seen this kind of thing before," David told me during one of our conversations. "Family financial fraud cases often involve patterns of manipulation and entitlement that go back years. The credit card theft is probably just the tip of the iceberg." He offered to help me investigate Madison's financial history and current situation, using his professional skills to gather information that might be relevant to understanding the full scope of her deceptive behavior. What David discovered was shocking. Through public record searches and social media investigation, he found evidence that Madison had been living far beyond her stated means for years. Designer clothes, expensive restaurants, luxury weekend trips, and costly beauty treatments all documented on her social media accounts with dates and locations. More importantly, David uncovered evidence that the European vacation had not been a spontaneous decision. Madison had been planning the trip for months, researching luxury hotels and high-end restaurants, creating detailed itineraries for multiple cities. This was not an impulsive mistake. It was a premeditated plan to use my money for an elaborate family vacation. The most damning evidence was a series of text messages between Madison and her best friend that David was able to obtain through mutual connections. In these messages, Madison explicitly discussed her plan to use my credit card for the trip, expressing confidence that I would not notice the charges immediately, and that I would ultimately forgive her once everyone had such a wonderful time together. "Eva will be mad at first, but she always gets over stuff like this," one message read. "And honestly, she has so much money, she probably will not even miss it. This is going to be the best family bonding experience ever." The messages revealed that Madison had never intended to ask permission or pay for the trip herself. She had calculated that my love for our family would prevent me from taking serious action against her, and that the positive memories from the vacation would eventually overshadow any anger about the unauthorized charges. Armed with this evidence and growing support from key family members, I was ready to move to the next phase of my response plan. But before I could act, Madison made a move that would completely change the trajectory of our conflict. She convinced our parents to approach me with a compromise proposal. "Eva, honey, we have been talking with Madison, and we think we have found a solution that will work for everyone," our mother said during what she described as a family reconciliation meeting at my house. The proposal was insulting in its presumption. Madison would apologize formally for the misunderstanding. She would pay me back in small monthly installments over several years with no interest. In exchange, I would agree not to pursue any legal action and would welcome her back into family gatherings without holding a grudge. "We just think that maintaining family harmony is more important than money," our father added. "Madison has learned her lesson, and she really is sorry." But the most shocking part of their proposal was the implication that I was somehow responsible for creating the situation by being too successful and too generous. "Maybe this is a good opportunity for all of us to think about how we handle money and resources as a family," our mother suggested. "Perhaps some clearer boundaries would help everyone feel more comfortable." I realized in that moment that Madison's manipulation had been even more successful than I had imagined. She had managed to reframe her theft as a family communication problem with shared responsibility for the conflict. That evening, after our parents left, I called Marcus and Linda to inform them about the proposed compromise and to let them know that I was ready to implement my real response plan. "What are you thinking, Eva?" Marcus asked. "I am thinking that actions have consequences," I replied. "And it is time for Madison to learn what those consequences look like when you betray someone who has been supporting your entire family for years." I was done being the family doormat. It was time for everyone to understand exactly what they had taken for granted. My confidence in my growing alliance was shattered exactly 3 weeks after our parents' insulting compromise proposal. The betrayal came from the person I trusted most, my brother Marcus. It started with small things I initially dismissed as coincidences. Madison somehow knew details about my investigation that I had only shared with Marcus and Linda. She knew I had been gathering financial evidence. She knew about David's involvement. Most concerning, she seemed to have advance warning about my planned responses to her manipulation attempts. The first major red flag occurred when Madison preemptively contacted my business clients with a sob story about family difficulties affecting my emotional stability. 3 of my most important clients received phone calls from her expressing concern that I was going through personal problems that might impact my professional judgment and reliability. "I just wanted to give you a heads up that my sister Eva is dealing with some family stress right now," Madison told my biggest client according to what they shared with me later. "She has been really emotional and unpredictable lately. I hope it does not affect her work quality, but I thought you should know." These calls were strategically timed and precisely targeted. Madison somehow knew exactly which clients were most important to my business and most likely to be concerned about personal issues affecting professional performance. She knew details about my client relationships that I had never shared with anyone except Marcus during our private conversations about my business. The second red flag was Madison's sudden legal sophistication. She hired an attorney and began making calculated moves to protect herself from potential fraud charges. Her lawyer sent me a letter claiming that, as an authorized user on my credit card account, Madison had legal rights to make purchases and that my accusations of theft were unfounded. But the letter included specific details about my evidence collection and investigation methods that could only have come from someone with inside knowledge of my strategy. The lawyer referenced conversations I had only had with Marcus, including my concerns about family manipulation patterns and my plans for seeking restitution. When I confronted Marcus directly, his response confirmed my worst fears. "Eva, I think you are taking this way too far," he said during what would be our final private conversation. "Madison made a mistake, yes, but you are acting like she committed some terrible crime. She is family, and you are treating her like an enemy." "She stole $12,700 from me, Marcus. That is not a mistake. That is fraud." "Look, I know you are angry, but think about the bigger picture here. If you pursue legal action against Madison, it will destroy our family. Mom and Dad are already stressed about this situation. Do you really want to be responsible for tearing our family apart over money?" The manipulation was subtle but unmistakable. Marcus was using the same guilt tactics that Madison had employed, framing my pursuit of justice as selfish family destruction rather than appropriate consequence for criminal behavior. But the final confirmation came when Marcus made a proposal that revealed the true extent of his betrayal. "I have been talking with Madison and our parents, and we think there might be a better solution," he said. "What if Madison signed over her inheritance rights to you as payment for the money she spent? That way you get compensated, and she does not have to come up with cash she does not have." The inheritance he was referring to was our parents' house and small retirement savings worth maybe $40,000 total that would be split among the three of us eventually. Madison would be giving up roughly $13,000 in future inheritance to settle a $12,700 debt, while avoiding any immediate financial consequences or accountability. But the proposal revealed something much more significant. Marcus and Madison had been coordinating their responses to my actions. They had developed a strategy to minimize her consequences while positioning me as the unreasonable aggressor threatening family harmony. "You have been discussing my private conversations with Madison this entire time, have not you?" I asked directly. Marcus had the decency to look embarrassed, but he did not deny it. "Eva, we are all worried about you. You are so focused on revenge that you are losing sight of what really matters. Madison is sorry, and she is trying to make things right. Why cannot you just accept her apology and move forward? Because her apology is meaningless when she is simultaneously trying to destroy my business reputation and hide behind lawyers instead of taking responsibility. She only hired a lawyer because you were threatening her with criminal charges. You escalated this situation, not her." I realized in that moment that I had completely misjudged my brother. I had assumed that his financial background and pragmatic personality would make him a natural ally in seeking accountability for Madison's fraud. Instead, he had become her most effective defender and my most dangerous enemy. Marcus had access to all of my strategic plans, evidence collection, and response timeline. He understood my business relationships and client concerns. He knew my emotional vulnerabilities and family loyalty triggers. And he had been sharing all of that information with Madison, allowing her to stay several steps ahead of my efforts to hold her accountable. The most painful part was realizing that Marcus genuinely believed he was protecting family unity. He was not maliciously betraying me for personal gain. He was sacrificing my right to justice in order to preserve a dysfunctional family dynamic that prioritized Madison's comfort over everyone else's well-being. With Marcus actively working against me and our parents supporting Madison's victim narrative, I found myself more isolated than ever. Linda remained supportive, but she lived across the country and had limited ability to influence the local family dynamics. David continued providing investigative assistance, but as a neighbor rather than family member, his support carried less weight in family discussions. Madison, meanwhile, was gaining confidence and becoming more aggressive in her counterattack. She began spreading rumors about my mental health and emotional stability. She suggested to extended family members that my business success had made me arrogant and controlling. She portrayed my demand for repayment as evidence that I valued money more than family relationships. The temporary defeat was complete when our parents announced that they would be hosting family holiday celebrations at Marcus's house, instead of mine, explaining that they wanted to avoid family tension during the holiday season. "We just think it would be better if you and Madison had some space from each other until this situation gets resolved," our mother explained over the phone. "Maybe after some time passes, everyone can calm down and find a way to move forward together." I was being excluded from family gatherings in order to accommodate the person who had committed fraud against me. The victim was being punished while the perpetrator was being protected. But Madison and Marcus had made a critical error in their strategy. By isolating me from family support and attempting to damage my professional reputation, they had crossed lines that would bring new allies into the conflict and trigger consequences they had never anticipated. The isolation I felt after Marcus's betrayal and my family's rejection lasted exactly 2 weeks before everything changed dramatically. The shift began with a phone call from someone I had never expected to hear from: Madison's ex-husband, Jake. "Eva, I hope you do not mind me contacting you directly," Jake said when he called my business line. "I heard through mutual friends about what Madison did with your credit card, and I think there are some things you should know about her financial history that might help your situation." Jake and Madison had been divorced for almost 4 years, and their relationship had ended badly due to what he described as Madison's financial infidelity and compulsive lying about money. During their marriage, she had hidden credit card debts, made unauthorized purchases, and consistently lived beyond their means while blaming him for their financial problems. "The European vacation thing sounds exactly like something Madison would do," Jake explained. "She has this way of convincing herself that she deserves expensive things, and then finding ways to get other people to pay for them without taking responsibility herself." But Jake had more than just character insights to offer. He had documentation. During their divorce proceedings, Jake had been required to compile detailed financial records showing Madison's spending patterns and hidden debts. He had discovered credit card accounts she had opened without his knowledge, personal loans she had taken out using false information, and a pattern of financial manipulation that went back to the early years of their marriage. I kept all the records because my lawyer said they might be relevant if Madison ever tried to modify our divorce agreement or claim she deserved additional support, Jake told me. "But honestly, I think this information might be more useful to you right now." The documentation Jake provided was devastating for Madison's credibility. Bank statements showing overdraft fees and bounced checks, credit reports revealing hidden debts and delinquent payments, email exchanges where Madison lied to creditors about her employment status and income level, a comprehensive picture of financial irresponsibility and deception spanning over 6 years. Most importantly, Jake's records showed that Madison's spending habits had actually escalated after their divorce, not improved. She was currently carrying credit card debt on multiple accounts, had been late on rent payments repeatedly, and was living paycheck to paycheck despite claiming to have savings for the European vacation. The $12,700 she spent on your card probably represents more money than she has legitimately earned in the past 6 months, Jake calculated after reviewing his financial analysis. "There is no way she was ever going to be able to pay you back from her legitimate income." But Jake was not my only unexpected ally. The second game-changing support came from my business attorney, Rebecca, who had been handling contract negotiations for my company and was aware of Madison's attempt to damage my client relationships. "Eva, what your sister did by contacting your clients crosses into harassment and potential business interference," Rebecca explained during an emergency consultation. "She has no legitimate business reason to contact your clients, and her statements about your emotional stability could be considered defamatory if they impact your professional reputation." Rebecca recommended that we document every instance of Madison's interference with my business and prepare to include those actions in any legal proceedings related to the credit card fraud. She also suggested that we send cease and desist letters to Madison and her attorney, demanding that all contact with my clients stop immediately. But the most significant new ally came from a source that completely blindsided Madison and Marcus: our grandmother Helen, our father's mother, who was 92 years old and had been quietly observing the family conflict without taking sides. Helen called me directly one evening, something she rarely did, and asked me to visit her the following day for tea and conversation. "Eva dear, I have been watching this situation with Madison, and I think it is time someone spoke some truth around here," Helen said when I arrived at her assisted living apartment. "That girl has been coddled and enabled her entire life, and it has not done her any favors." Helen's perspective carried enormous weight in our family. She was universally respected for her wisdom, fairness, and moral clarity. She had raised 5 children during difficult economic times, built a successful marriage that lasted 67 years, and commanded absolute respect from everyone in the extended family. "Madison stole from you, plain and simple," Helen continued. "And the fact that your parents and Marcus are making excuses for her behavior shows that they have learned nothing from all the other times she has gotten herself into trouble." Helen went on to describe incidents from Madison's childhood and teenage years that I had either forgotten or never known about. Money missing from Helen's purse during family visits. Lies about school expenses that were actually spent on personal items. Manipulation tactics used to get extended family members to give her money for various emergencies that turned out to be fabricated. "Your parents always said Madison was just going through difficult phases and that she would grow out of it," Helen said. "But she is 30 years old now, Eva. This is not a phase anymore. This is who she chooses to be." But Helen offered more than moral support. She had been considering how to distribute some of her financial assets while she was still alive to see the family benefit from them. She had been planning to give each grandchild an equal inheritance advance, but Madison's recent behavior had changed her mind completely. "I am rewriting my will to exclude Madison entirely," Helen announced, "and I am giving her portion to you immediately as compensation for what she stole, and as recognition that you are the only grandchild who has consistently shown integrity and responsibility." The amount Helen was offering was substantial, $25,000 more than enough to cover the $12,700 Madison had stolen, plus additional compensation for the business interference and emotional distress she had caused. But more importantly than the money, Helen's public support completely changed the family dynamics. When word spread that Helen was taking such a strong stand against Madison's behavior, other family members began reconsidering their positions. Our Aunt Linda called with additional support, offering to help organize a family intervention where Madison would be confronted by multiple family members demanding accountability rather than excuses. 2 of our cousins reached out with their own stories of money-lending incidents with Madison that had never been repaid. Even some of our parents' friends, who had heard one-sided versions of the conflict from Patricia and Robert, began asking pointed questions about Madison's version of events when they learned about the comprehensive evidence of her financial deception. The final piece of new evidence came from David's continued investigation. He had been monitoring Madison's social media activity and discovered that she was already planning another expensive vacation, this time to Hawaii, scheduled for the following month. The Hawaii trip planning revealed that Madison had learned nothing from the consequences of her European fraud. She was again researching luxury accommodations and high-end activities that would cost far more than her legitimate income could support. Based on her pattern of behavior, David predicted that she would likely attempt to use another family member's financial resources to fund this trip. "She is not sorry, and she is not planning to change her behavior," David concluded after showing me the evidence of her continued financial fantasy planning. "She is just trying to wait out the consequences of her last theft before moving on to her next victim." Armed with overwhelming evidence, powerful new allies, and a clear understanding of Madison's continued deceptive intentions, I was finally ready to implement the full consequences of her actions. The temporary defeat was over, and it was time for justice to be served completely and permanently. The final confrontation happened on a cold December morning that would forever change our family dynamics. I had spent the previous week coordinating with my allies to ensure that Madison could not manipulate or escape the consequences of her actions any longer. The setting was carefully chosen Helen's assisted living facility community room, where several family members could gather, but Madison would not be able to create a dramatic scene or leave easily. Helen had requested a family meeting to discuss important financial and family matters, giving everyone the impression that this was about her estate planning rather than Madison's fraud. When Madison arrived with our parents and Marcus, she was clearly expecting a routine family gathering. She had no idea that Jake, Rebecca, David, Linda, and several other family members were already present with comprehensive documentation of her financial crimes and manipulation campaign. Helen started the meeting by announcing her decision to revise her will and immediately distribute Madison's inheritance portion to me as compensation for the theft. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Madison, you stole $12,700 from your sister," Helen said clearly, her 92-year-old voice carrying absolute authority. "You lied to your entire family about how you paid for that vacation. You tried to destroy Eva's business reputation when she demanded accountability, and according to the evidence we have gathered, you are already planning your next expensive vacation that you cannot afford." Madison immediately began crying and protesting, but Helen continued without pause. "Jake has provided us with documentation showing that this behavior is part of a long pattern of financial deception and theft. Rebecca has evidence that you attempted to interfere with Eva's business relationships, and David has discovered that you are continuing to plan expensive trips while claiming you cannot afford to repay the money you stole." Rebecca then presented the legal documentation. The cease and desist order demanding that Madison stop all contact with my clients. The detailed analysis showing that her status as an authorized user did not give her permission to make purchases without my knowledge or consent. The criminal fraud complaint that would be filed if restitution was not made immediately and completely. "Madison, you have exactly 24 hours to provide complete repayment of $12,700, plus an additional $3,000 for business damages and legal costs," Rebecca announced. "If payment is not received, criminal charges will be filed and civil litigation will begin to recover damages and attorney fees." Madison's response revealed the true extent of her entitlement and manipulation. Instead of apologizing or accepting responsibility, she became angry and defiant. "This is insane!" she screamed. "Ava, you are destroying our family over money. I cannot believe you are being so cruel and vindictive. I said I was sorry, and I promised to pay you back eventually." "When Madison," I asked calmly, "your current income is $30,000 per year. Your living expenses exceed your income every month. You have existing credit card debt on multiple accounts. You have never successfully saved money for any significant expense in your adult life. When exactly were you planning to pay me back?" Madison could not answer the question because there was no realistic answer. She had never intended to pay me back from her own resources. Her plan had been to wait until I forgave the debt or until someone else in the family provided her with money to settle the obligation. Marcus tried to defend her, but his credibility had been completely destroyed by the evidence of his betrayal and coordination with Madison's manipulation campaign. "Marcus, you chose to prioritize enabling Madison's criminal behavior over supporting your sister who was seeking justice," Linda said directly. "Your actions have been just as disappointing as Madison's." Our parents were finally forced to confront the reality that their enabling parenting had created an adult daughter who felt entitled to steal from family members without consequences. The evidence was too comprehensive, and the support for my position too strong for them to continue making excuses. "Madison, we are deeply disappointed in your choices," our father finally said. "We love you, but we cannot support behavior that hurts other family members. You need to take responsibility for your actions and make this right." The 24-hour deadline came and went without any attempt at payment from Madison. She had apparently assumed that the threat of criminal charges was a bluff, and that family pressure would eventually force me to back down. She was wrong. Rebecca filed the criminal fraud complaint the following morning, The civil lawsuit was initiated the same afternoon, seeking full restitution plus damages, attorney fees, and court costs. Additionally, I implemented the most powerful consequence of all. I sold my house. The house where Madison and our parents had enjoyed countless family gatherings. The house where Madison had felt comfortable enough to steal from me because she assumed I would always prioritize family harmony over personal boundaries. The house that had become a symbol of my role as the family provider and enabler. I sold it within 6 weeks and moved across the country to start a new life near Linda and other supportive family members who understood the difference between genuine family loyalty and enabling destructive behavior. The sale of the house sent a clear message that could not be misinterpreted. Actions have consequences, and family relationships require mutual respect rather than one-sided sacrifice. Madison's response to losing her criminal case was to attempt reconciliation, but her definition of reconciliation was entirely self-serving. She offered to drop her complaints about my overreaction if I would drop the criminal charges and civil lawsuit. She promised to try harder to pay me back if I would move back and resume hosting family gatherings. But I had learned too much about healthy boundaries and self-respect to accept such manipulative offers. The criminal case resulted in Madison being sentenced to community service probation and mandatory financial counseling. The civil judgment awarded me full restitution plus damages totaling over $18,000. More importantly, I had documented legal proof that Madison was a convicted thief who could not be trusted with financial access or responsibility. Marcus eventually acknowledged his mistakes and apologized for his betrayal, but our relationship never fully recovered. Trust once broken by family manipulation and coordination with criminal behavior cannot be easily rebuilt. Our parents struggled with the new reality, but eventually came to understand that enabling Madison's behavior had not been helping her develop into a responsible adult. They began setting their own boundaries and demanding accountability from her in ways they should have done decades earlier. The most surprising outcome was the strength and quality of the relationships I built with people who supported justice over family dysfunction. Jake became a genuine friend who provided valuable perspective on recognizing and responding to manipulative behavior. Rebecca became both my attorney and mentor for building a business that prioritized integrity and clear boundaries. David remained a close friend whose investigative skills had been crucial to documenting the truth. Helen lived to see the full resolution of the conflict and expressed pride that I had chosen justice over enabling. Her financial support had been important, but her moral support had been invaluable in giving me permission to prioritize my own well-being over family manipulation. My new life across the country included a thriving business, genuine friendships based on mutual respect, and chosen family relationships with people who understood that love requires accountability rather than endless enabling. Madison eventually declared bankruptcy and moved back in with our parents, where she continues to struggle with the long-term consequences of her choices. The Hawaii vacation never happened. Her pattern of financial irresponsibility finally caught up with her in ways that could not be solved by stealing from family members or manipulating others into providing resources. The most important lesson I learned was that family loyalty should never require sacrificing your own dignity, boundaries, or financial security. Real family members support accountability and justice rather than demanding that you enable destructive behavior in the name of keeping peace. Sometimes, the greatest act of love is refusing to participate in dynamics that prevent someone from experiencing the natural consequences of their choices. Madison needed to learn that actions have consequences, and my family needed to learn that love without boundaries is not actually love at all. Looking back, I realized that selling the house and moving away was not just about punishing Madison for her theft. It was about refusing to continue playing a role in a family system that required me to be the perpetual provider, enabler, and absorber of other people's poor choices. My new life is built on relationships where generosity is appreciated rather than expected, where boundaries are respected rather than tested, and where accountability is valued rather than avoided. These are the relationships that deserve my time, energy, and resources. Have you ever had to choose between family loyalty and personal justice? What would you do if someone you trusted stole thousands of dollars from you, then tried to make you the villain for demanding accountability? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I would love to hear about your experiences with family drama and boundary setting. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more real-life tales about standing up for yourself when family members cross serious lines. And definitely share this with anyone who needs to hear that it is okay to prioritize your own well-being over keeping toxic family peace. Thank you for listening to my journey from doormat to empowered boundary setter. And remember that sometimes the people who claim to love you the most are the ones who need the strongest boundaries to learn how to love you properly.